Good evening, good afternoon, good morning from wherever you're joining us today on this episode of the Africa Football Business Show. Uh, Welcome to this episode 22 of the Africa Football Business Show. Season 4, looking at how we can strengthen Africa's football ecosystem. Today, we are privileged to have uh, two great gentlemen, not strangers to our show here. I think they have been our most regular. They have had the most appearances on the Africa Football Business Show. It's also the first time that we have siblings on this show. It's a great pleasure, and we look forward to an exciting and insightful discussion. Um, so I'll go on and introduce my guests today. I'll just have to read their profiles, and you'll bear with me as I do this. So first, we have Dr. Gerard Aquindez. So Gerard Aquindez combines a wealth of experience in sports as an athlete, a coach, former assistant manager in a sportswear company, and also as a scholar and researcher. As an athlete, Gerard captained the Benin basketball national team and played professional basketball in Europe. I think that's mainly in Belgium. Dr. Akindes earned a master's in sports administration and PhD in sports media studies at Ohio University, where he also taught sports management at the College of Business. His research focuses on international sport management, the economy of sports, television broadcasting, and athlete migration. He has edited a book titled Identity and Nation in African Football, Funds, Communities, and Clubs, published several journal articles, and made numerous presentations in conferences. He was a senior research manager at the Josur Institute, which is a legacy program for the FIFA World Cup in Qatar 2022. Dr. Akindes is currently adjunct faculty at the University of Salford, Manchester, and Northwestern University, Qatar. He's an independent researcher and sport management consultant for sport governing bodies and mentors the National Paralympic Committee of the Central African Republic. Welcome to the show, Gerard. Our second guest, older brother to Gerard, is Professor Simon Adetona Akindes. Professor Akindes is a professor in political science, the Department of Politics, Philosophy, and Law, and Director of International Studies at the University of Wisconsin-Parkside in the USA. He has worked as a UNESCO consultant for higher education programs in Cote d'Ivoire and Equatorial Guinea, and teaches various postgraduate programs in Africa. He founded Tous au Sport in the USA and Hulumwed Sport, that's Sports for All Ethiopia, which seek to expand physical activity and sports to create healthier, cleaner, and happier communities. He also created Foundation Monique Agboton Akindes that mark a foundation for girls' education in Benin, his country of origin. Professor Akindes is a former international of Benin, Football International of Benin, and is a board member of Sports Africa Network, a unique organization focused on research in Africa at the continental level. He practices sports, including tennis, table tennis, and of course football, and is active in the gym. Professor Akindes has made numerous presentations worldwide and has published book chapters and journal articles on education, democratization, political and social movements, civil-military relations, popular music, and sports in Africa. He has also published educational books on teaching English. His latest publication on sports in Africa, that's in 2020 and 2021, have been released on the online publication Africa is a Country, based in South Africa, and on La Nouvelle Tribune, based in Benin. So welcome to the show, Professor Akindes. So yeah, it's good to have siblings here. We always talk about football siblings. And in Africa, some of the most popular ones we know are Kolo and Yaya Toure. We have Kevin Prince and Jerome Boateng of Ghana. We also have the Ayew brothers from Ghana. Here in Kenya, we have McDonald Mariga and Victor Wanyama. And in Zambia, we have Christopher and Felix Katongo. If you know of any other siblings in the Africa football scene, feel free to post their names on the comment section. But it's a pleasure to have the Akindes siblings here with us to discuss this very important and timely topic in global football. That is the hyper-commercialization of sport. Which way should Africa take? So welcome, gentlemen. Maybe you can just add on to what I've already said, and we'll start a new Professor Akindes, Simon, for introductions. You're muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Oh, I'm saying that I don't have anything special to add to what you've just said. I think that I should extend my gratitude to you and thank you for what you are doing, Brian, and thank you again for inviting me to just say a few things that I know and to tell you about my mind about what's going on in football in Africa.
Welcome, Simon. Gerard, anything to add?
Nothing really to add. It's just to thank you for having me here, I think, for the third time. I really appreciate it, and mostly appreciate what you are doing to improve or to contribute to African football and African sport in general. It's a great contribution. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you very much, Gerard and Simon. Yes, they're like I said before, they have made the most appearances on the Africa Football Business Show. That is 3 each. And it's always a pleasure to have to discuss matters football, business, and politics with the Akindes brothers. So we'll just dive straight in. All this has started this year with the launch and immediate collapse of the European Super League, a company that was created to rival the UEFA Champions League, which is Europe's premier club competition. And we know that this outfit had the backing of one of the biggest investment banks from the US, that's JP Morgan Chase. And a big reason as to why this collapsed or was condemned by many, it was that it was going against the tenets of football, and that being the solidarity philosophy that we always talk about, that ensures everybody benefits, and the most important, we continue to support the grassroots. So I'll just fill these to both of you. What's your take on the European Super League, its launch and collapse? We start with you, Gerard.
For me, it's not because people are not happy that the European Super League collapsed. I think it's a power struggle between UEFA and the new league. Without these top clubs, the UEFA will lose a good portion of the money they make. It's more than $2 billion they are going to euros they are going to lose every year, and that was the main problem for them. That's why it collapsed, because the interest of the people who go to the games, except the big corporation sponsors and private company buying suites at the games, their interest is just a contribution. And today, if you want to succeed financially, there are many other agencies that are going to play a big role. And the power struggle was such a way that UEFA couldn't afford to lose these top clubs. And they already had a kind of Super League to the Champions League. The top clubs are protected. They cannot be eliminated early. They get most of the revenues that are generated by the Champions League. Then there were already a form of Super League within European football with the Champions League, the top of the Champions League, not the whole competition. Then it was more that than anything else. It's a power struggle. And if there were no power struggle and UEFA was going to continue getting its revenues, I think the European Super League would have gone on as planned.
Interesting. Your take on this, Simon, the European Super League?
Well, what I would say is that it's the result of the contradictions of football industry. You know, the football industry relies on nationhood, it relies on ethnicity, regionalism, it relies on community, and that's the heart of the game, and that's why you have all these fans that are moved every day, that go to the stadium and get involved, you know, emotionally and so on and so forth. All right, but the main actors who are the players and the managers of the teams are the producers. They are the producers of the show itself. Without them, there would be no football. Without them, there would be no businessmen and corporate magnates trying to be interested in the game. So you have these three factors that are very important. And then when you add also the layer of the media, you have four different components organizing football, and they don't have the same interest. Basically, that's what it is. Recently, football has been taken controlled by big corporations. They invest, they are funding the game. There is less accountability. They are bringing, to get into football, some of the management practices that they have, and this has resulted in growing inequality among players and among teams. The media is there, and they make it possible for people to make money, and the focus is on results. So there is this kind of disconnection that has been taking place in football for some time now, okay, where inequality has been normalized, where the money goes to just a few people, and the corporate magnates, they don't care really, because they themselves, it is about flattering their ego, it is about making money, it's for their prestige, it's for their image, it's for their businesses, which is not the concern of those who go and attend the games like me. So it is, if you want, the culmination of all these factors that has brought, that has brought this crisis that we have witnessed. But for me, if the structure of the game do not change, if the financial responsibility is not shared, if there is no more solidarity, then things are going to continue, and maybe this is going to come out again from the drawer one day. So that is my take on this, on what is happening now.
Yeah, so I see here the issue of power struggle between different stakeholders. Of course, the ones that hold the purse usually hold more power. There's also an issue of conflict of interest between the different stakeholders, and the most important ones not being really considered. And as Simon, you put it out, the players, the managers, the one who create that spectacle, and in this case also the fans. But you can say, as much as these the European Super League seemed to have failed or was a stillbirth, it really signaled a change in the industry, which in my view we cannot really avoid, and that is the hyper-commercialization of football. And this has been influenced by the growing participation, like again you put it out, by the corporates and their financing models, such as private equity. Also the transformation in technology. The way people consume football now has really changed, and these are the things that are pushing these developments within the industry. Back to you, Gerard. How are these changes affecting Africa, the sports ecosystem in Africa?
The changes have been affecting Africa for long. I say it's not radical change, it's a progressive change. Media, mostly broadcasting, have taken over the financing of sports for some time now, probably late 90s, that the trend was started, and it's just increasing. And for Africa, what it did is to put Africa on what we call the periphery. We consume. media, we consume content that is produced elsewhere. We consume games that are played elsewhere. And slowly, these games, this competition are almost at the center of who we are on the continent as football fans. And that had been affecting Africa a lot. And Africa spends more in 2016. Africa broadcasters spend more than $300 million to acquire content from elsewhere, not to support African sport, to acquire content from elsewhere for Africans to consume. Then what it did is to reinforce our position on the periphery of what happens in global sport. Basically, that's what it did. New technologies, although there's some windows for African sport to take advantage of over-the-top streaming, all the streaming, it's still difficult to say that this is going to radically position Africa differently, because a lot of elements of what makes sports valuable and in terms of finance, we don't have them in place to be able to commercialize our sport globally. And generally, through some of the experiences through streaming, what we observe the most, it is Africans in the diaspora without the possibility to watch African sport on TV. We use streaming to access the local sport. It is just they get a cultural proximity through streaming. And that's what it's doing really. It hasn't pushed out African sport outside African football, much outside the continent. TV is still doing it a little bit with African Cup of Nations. But besides that, I don't think our football is in the position where it can have a global reach in terms of interest. It has a global reach in terms of technology because it's streamed, it is on TV, it's on satellite TV. But in terms of interest, the global reach is minimum. And we are directly in competition, and global football is in competition with European dominance, almost European hegemony in football. What's created limited room for African football to expand and to reach wider audience outside of the continent. I think the challenge is how to already capture what we have in the continent, and then we can think about outside the continent. Right now, it's a difficult competition.
Clearly, so this commercialization, it has been happening, if we can say, from the late 80s, mid 90s, and it has continuously or progressively disadvantaged the African football industry, in that we are not enjoying even what we are producing ourselves. So how should the continent respond? And in asking this, one of the responses we've had, not really coming from the continent, but the responses from Africa has been the creation of the African Super League, which is still very much idea. We don't have much information about the same, but it's something that already the new CAF president, Dr. Patrice Motsepe, has announced. Professor Simon Akindes, what's your take on the African Super League, and what would be some of the pros and cons of having such a competition in Africa as a way of responding to these hyper-commercialization of the sport?
Well, first, I'd like to say a little bit of what the African Super League is going to look like according to its designers. In terms of designers, I would say that the whole project was first initiated by Infantino himself, the president of FIFA. He was in Kinshasa, in the Congo, in DRC, attending the 80th anniversary of Tepe Mazembe, and he just announced that it would be good to have an African Super League. And what happened next is that he was able to lay his hands on FIFA, on CAF itself. You know, he was very instrumental in promoting the current president of CAF. And eventually, the idea went down from top to bottom. basically, the president of CAF gave his agreement, to starting this league. There are going to be 20 teams. That's what we know so far. Most of the teams are going to come from North Africa, and the selection of teams is based, either on the market. I mean, teams that were already structured and that had a big following, especially in North Africa, and some other teams in sub-Saharan Africa, and teams that had a good foundation, are the ones that are going to be selected. And last time I looked, there was only one team from Nigeria, Enyimba, 3 teams from South Africa, 3 teams from Egypt, 3 teams from Morocco, and there are other, and then Tunisia. Those are the teams, those are the countries that are going to provide the teams. So this looks good, because the discourse that is kind of promoting this initiative is that we would like more revenue that is going to be injected into African football. In the beginning, Infantino was saying that it was going to be close to $200 million, but the latest figures that came out of CAF themselves are about $5 billion in the next 5 years. It looks good, but the question always is, when you make money, how do you share it? How do you use it? It is a good thing to say we've made 5 billions, but the question about this initiative is that how is it going to be shared? So what they are trying to do is to create a product. It is create a product that they can sell all around the world, and that will earn income. But the income is likely to stay between the 20 clubs. Actually, they are even asking the 20 clubs to contribute. I think it's about $20 million over the next 5 years, for the stadiums, for the structures, and for the teams. So those teams are going to invest some money. Maybe they have the money, but when the money is made, it is going to stay among them. It is going to go theoretically to the players. It is going to go maybe to the administrators and to maintaining the infrastructure. And the idea is that the project is going to lead to the construction of a very high standard team for each team, a very high standard stadium for each team. That is 20 stadiums. And Africa has a population close to 1.4 billion people in 2021. And out of that population, 60% of the people are under 25. So you have a team at the top, you have teams at the top with maybe 500 players or maybe 600 players, let's say 600 players. And maybe if they have all the junior, the youth academies and so on and so forth, let's say each team has about 100 players. That is 100 players per team, and that you have 20 teams, that is 2,000 players. And look at the population of the continent. Look at the people who want to play and who do not have any place to play. So, in other words, we are looking, this project is good, it is feasible, maybe if it is allowed to go the way it is, or maybe there are going to be modification, but ultimately the money will go to all those clubs that are already doing well, while the rest will be left completely behind with no income. So everybody is going to become basically a consumer again, of African Super League, for the benefit of a few. And this is the model that, as Gerard was talking about earlier, that is leading to this crisis currently. And if nothing is done, then it's going to continue. And African football, in my view, is not going to benefit for that, because those teams are even permanent teams. I mean, they are part of the league, they are selected, and then nothing changed. They are permanent teams within the league. Where is this idea of meritocracy, competition? You compete from one division to go up. This idea that the team belongs, to the people. Where is all of this in this initiative? To me, it is not an initiative that is going to serve the people, that is going to serve African football, that needs so much. It is going to serve essentially, the few that are investing in it.
Yeah, this is something that, as you rightly say, Gerard pointed out at the beginning, and it has happened in Europe, as you said, for example, with the Champions League, and only the top teams benefiting from the revenue that is being generated at the expense of the bigger base. But we know in Africa the grassroots or these bigger base is even bigger. The amateur sports is where we have the most people. Our population, as you put it, 1.3 billion. Of course, not all of them are playing football, but we can try and create a relation and see how many people we are going to leave behind with this kind of outfit like the African Super League. Still, there is a need to commercialize football, especially for its sustainability. How can we do this within the continent? How can we commercialize football, or to what extent can we commercialize football on the continent and ensure that more people benefit from the sport? I'll get this question to the both of you, Simon, and then Gerard can contribute to this.
Well, as you point out, there is a need for commercialization. I mean, there is commercial activity at every level of African life. When we were younger, and then we used to go and play, you had all these women who used to come with drinks and so on and so forth. There is a need to commercialize. The big question is that when we commercialize and when we make profit, I'm saying there is a need for profits. When we make profits, who is going to take advantage of that? I'm going to give you the example maybe of Morocco. What Morocco did, the government knew that football sports was important. So in every town, in most provincial towns in Morocco, they created teams that were based on the communities. And the Moroccan government invested a lot of money into managing and funding those teams. FIFA gives money to African countries, but the money that FIFA gives to Morocco is just peanuts, when you compare with the money that they need for their own football. So the government also managed, television rights, and that money was collected and then distributed back to the various teams. So the various teams had some kind of revenue, for their activities. But what happened in the long run is that the government realized that this could not continue. So they started asking the clubs, to create not associations, but to create real clubs that look for their own money and so on and so forth. But that is an example of how, how this could be, how in the investment could happen. All right. The government has to invest. The people have to contribute one way or another, and the contribution really comes through taxation. All right. And then maybe private entities can also join. So people have to get together and discuss how this is going to be done for everyone to benefit from it. And this is, again, something that is lacking, that democratic process. But it is not just in Africa. It is in many different places around the world, So those are the things that I think are going to create some kind of commercialization and professionalization of football that is going to be widely spread among the community. We cannot afford just to have some trickle-down kind of a sports industry where we think or where we speculate or maybe where we hallucinate that, well, the money is going to be accumulated somewhere and then everybody is going to take advantage of it if they are not part of the process. So that's what I would say about your question.
Very, very, very interesting points there. The role of government really is crucial. Gerard, your take on this? How can we face this pressure? I think it's a pressure to commercialize African football. We have to commercialize to an extent to make the sport both economically and socially viable. What in your view, are some of the things we can do to achieve this?
I'd say first that we need to, before commercialization, we need resources for football. And then football is going to grow. When you have a product, I'll use product. I don't like to use it much because it looks like just a good. When you have something to sell that has value, then commercialization can happen. But as we operate now, I'm not sure if we can say that we have something that has value to be on the market and to be sold. And when I say value, it's a component that is critical in the way sport business and sport economics works. It is a mass consumption product. Till you reach that scale, you are not viable as a business. You have to have a lot of followers, a lot of spectators, because the value chain, the circle that's going to create value and attract at the end of it broadcasters and sponsors, it's a number of people who are watching the games, the eyeballs, they say, the people who are interested in what you do. And that's where the whole thing sits from a commercial perspective. And when we look at European sport, American sport, those who have commercialized or hyper-commercialized their sport, shouldn't forget that it is an history behind this. It is an history of investment, mostly through public funding or through patrons, to put the whole product to a level where it got traction, it gets mass consumption to become a commercial product. And that is critical. And this took years or decades. There's another element that we have to take in consideration. It is the economics of these countries. None of African countries can compare itself to economically. We just look at the raw economic data like GDP per capita. We cannot compare ourselves to any of the top countries with commercialized sport. Then commercialized sport cannot evolve in a vacuum. It needs an economy. It needs a macroeconomic aspect of it, people who can consume it. And no country in poverty can achieve commercialization of its sport. But at the same time, sport can still develop. And that is how Africa has to look itself. How do we develop sport such a way that the practice of sport, the entertainment of sport evolve, grow in terms of followers, in terms of quality of players or athletes, in terms of quality of administrators, in terms of quality of all the technical stuff. How do we do that with what we have? That's the question. And the model that we look at, we forget generally that they have achieved so much in the background that we don't see, that allows them to be who they are today. But how do we develop our sport to be in the position where it becomes attractive? It becomes attractive first to our people to watch, to our youth to watch, to our population to watch. And then I say attractive is not 200 people in the stadium, 500 people in the stadium. It's thousands of people in the stadium. And when we talk about streaming TV, it's hundreds of thousands of people streaming and watching this. And then the commercialization will have value. Then for me, if we don't focus on developing the quality of what we have to produce, we are not going to sell it to anyone, and we are not going to commercialize it. And the quality is critical.
So how can we improve the quality? What are some of the areas we need to improve on? For me, one of the areas I see quite obviously is infrastructure. What kind of infrastructure, for example, do we need on the continent to develop the quality of football? You know, we have talked about building a world-class stadium in each of the 54 African countries. Is this the way to go? What when you talk about quality, how do we improve this quality?
Well, go ahead, Gerard.
The stadium, for the stadium, it's the end of the chain. A stadium is just to host games. And when you haven't developed anything before you build your stadium, what you play there is not going to attract anybody. The stadium can be beautiful and however you want. What people are going to watch, how they're emotionally attached to the game, to the people who are playing, matters at first. And that takes us back to what do we build? What do we develop to take it to a stadium at the end? We need facilities, yes. And for me, facilities has different components. Proximity facilities. We sold all our playground in our cities for kids to play pickup games. And we are not providing alternative to them. We need to build or at least establish some proximity facilities for kids to just play. That is critical when we talk about facilities. And we need thousands or if not millions of them across the continent. That has been an effort to do. We need to provide space for kids to play spontaneously or with some coaches. That is critical. The second thing, if we want to take a beautiful game to a beautiful facility, we need a better coaches. And when I say better coaches, is not to have a coach with a high degree that coaches a national team or a high certificate. We need millions of youth coaches, well-trained youth coaches, and coaches at every level for girls and boys. And then we are investing in the development. And after that, we need everything around how do you run a game? How do you run a team? Or the administration. That's also, we need millions of them. We need scale. We need to develop that knowledge across the continent, everywhere, at different levels for sure, but that's what we need. And then the ground will be in good shape to move into commercialization, move into a world-class stadium and have a world-class game that has value to be watched. Otherwise, with all these prerequisites, we can build these facilities. And if the game is not good, nothing is going to happen. If there are no million people following these games, nothing is going to happen. We have to invest at the lowest level, at every level, consistently for years and years and years and years.
You take Simon. Yes, you would say, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Gerard, I think 100%. Not because he's my brother, but because what he's saying makes completely sense to me. We have to start from the beginning and go back to the basics. We have to start looking at ourselves and who we are and what we look like. And then from the observation, the study of our own situation, we get our minds together to design what we need, not for the short term, but for the long term. People don't have money. We don't have money. And we cannot rely on other people who have money to come and solve our problems. That has never happened, and that will never happen. In terms of our sports in general, and in terms of our football, more specifically, we really, really need to operate at our level. We want profits to be made, they're going to be minimal profits. We need to understand that we cannot make more than that. For example, the players who are involved in playing every day, you cannot play in Porto Novo, in Benin, or in Addis Ababa and expect a salary, let's say, of $2,000 a month, not even $2,000 a month, because nobody earns that really in the society itself. So we have to be at our level. And then we need to shift our way of understanding, what a player is and what football gives us. It is not just the glory of a victory. It is not just the result, that we can get one time. All right. It is the long-term development and the long-term life of people who are involved in it, whether they are players, whether they are administrators, whether they are doctors, whether they are referees, and so on and so forth. So we need to take that perspective into account and make sure that in the long run, people are going to continue living off their trade. But the big problem is that the way things are working these days is that everything is short term, is a short span, and then we think that a player has to win in 15, 20 years of activity, everything they need to win for the rest of their lives. This is impossible. So our society cannot provide that. So no matter what, I think that we need to focus on some kind of amateurism, or if you want, a hybridity between amateurism and professionalism. All right, we cannot go all professional right here now. It is not working anyway. We have in most professional teams, players don't get paid, or the pay is late, and it is complicated. They cannot maintain the teams, and so apart from a few. So we need to be realistic about who we are and rely on our own strength. It is an intellectual challenge, the way I put it usually, because there is no way you can go anywhere to see our conditions and then replicate what they do elsewhere. So we have to think very seriously, whether it's outside the box or beyond the box, but we have to think in different ways. If you are not ready to do that, then things are not going to fare well for us.
Okay, what I hear is, we cannot afford to develop football or to develop sport independent of society. I mean, we have to bring people in. We have to tie the development of sport to the overall development of our community. Which, going back to the scenario with the European Super League, we know one of the reasons is it failed was the pressure that came, especially from fans of some of the clubs that intended to participate. So there was a lot of hue and cry from the community, if we can put it that way. But we haven't seen much participation or contribution from the fans on the continent when it comes to developments here, such as the African Super League. Where is the fans' voice in all this? Why is it that in Africa we don't have? I know you talked about democratizing the space. How can we achieve this, Simon?
Well, the way we look at funds is usually as contributors in terms of money. They have to contribute, but they are much more than that. The reason why fans are not very active in the discussions. I mean, one of the reasons when it comes to football, I would say, is that they have been completely delocalized. You are in a village, and then you are wearing Neymar shirts, and you call yourself Neymar. I mean, European football has completely invested, if you want, our own lives. All right. So we don't feel any attachment to what is going on in terms of football around us anymore. The few times I went to Africa in the past 10 years and ventured into a stadium, the stadiums were pathetically empty. All right. And then you can find maybe 2 games. Maybe if you go to Kenya, maybe Gor Mahia against FC Leopard, maybe the fan get active, and then that's it. So how do we involve our fans in our sport so that they are active participants? That is a big question, a big problem. But I don't see. I mean, there are probably ways, but we have to think about how we can do it. And I'm afraid I do not have any ready-made solutions. But what I know for sure is what Gerard told us earlier. As long as we don't focus on the game, we don't focus on the people, we don't focus on how they are really, linked with the game and the community. When we cannot do that, then nothing is going to happen. The Tepe Mazembe model is not, or the Horoya models are not the models that we need on the continent.
Yeah, interesting. Gerard, your take on this? For example, in Europe, I understand at the back end of the collapse of this European Super League, they formed the Convention of the Future of European Football, where they brought together different stakeholders to have a kind of long consultative process on the future of the game on that continent. Is this possible in Africa? If yes, how do we go about it? If no, what kind of changes or management structures do we need on the continent to really get all stakeholders on board to contribute towards the development of the game, and not just as fans, but even in knowledge at the management level?
I think I'll talk quickly about the fans because they are really the core with the players of the whole adventure. Before it can become commercial, these are the two key components. And fans are not random. It is something clubs have to understand. What is a fan? There's a lot of work about fan identification. There's a lot of psychology has been done about what will create a link between a club and a fan. And there are many factors that generate that connection. And most clubs have to understand that I cannot wake up because I have a few millions in my pocket, start a team, and have a popular team the following day, even if I have the best players. It doesn't happen like that. There's an emotional, almost irrational component that has to be built. The geography of the club, where the club is located. I did a quick, I wrote on comparison between a football club that came from the academy, one of the best academy on the continent, the Diamba in Senegal, and another club, which is Gedewai FC in a very popular neighborhood. These are not a neighborhood, it's a suburb, but not the luxury suburbs in the US, popular suburbs in Senegal, in Dakar. And it's obvious when Gedewai FC could get 10,000 people when the team was playing well in their stadium, Diamba couldn't get more than 500 people. And that creates automatically a gap in the capacity of these two clubs to be able to become commercialized, to commercialize their games, because there are more fans, even if they are poorer in Gedewai than they are in Sali, where Diamba's FC sits. There's a gap. And the capacity for Gedewai to grow is much bigger than the capacity for Diamba to grow, because they have a fan base, local fan base with an identity. They have a strong identity. They belong to the space. They recruit some of their players there. There's a lot of work that has to be done with where the club live and how they connect to the people who live there, to the communities. That's something you have to start thinking about. It's not just about money. It's about the identity. That's one element. And the second element, it is very, it was very disturbing. I look at a FIFA report. They don't have it online anymore, which was showing how many licensed players we have and non-licensed players. Africa has the lowest number of licensed players, the lowest number of non-licensed players. What does it mean? It just means that our football is not organized. At the scale-wise, it's not organized. We have very low numbers of trained coaches. What also means we have limited capacity to improve the quality of the players we train. The academies are doing a good job, but it's a very, very limited number of players. We have millions of kids in our countries. Academy is going to screen 2,000. You haven't even scratched your talent potential when you only screen 2,000 or 3,000 players. What means that we are not doing a good job improving the numbers and the quality of people who are working with our youth to develop football players. Then at the end, we are not building enough capacity at every level. The last element I'm going to mention is the quality of the management. We call it commonly good governance, and we often talk about corruption. Corruption is everywhere. Yes, it's in Africa, but I think the biggest handicap is not that. It is first the capacity of the people who are leading our football. What do they know and how do they do it? If they are very well trained, of course, they will put better structure that are going to limit and contain the ability to waste money or to do the wrong thing when you are running a club. But at that level as well, I'm not talking about having professional people doing sport management all over the continent, but there's some level of understanding that are necessary. And because we don't have enough resources to sustain people professionally who can be working with individual clubs, there are a few technical elements that can be done from a league level. You can join your marketing capacity. You can join your many aspects of the management of a club can be mutualized to allow to professionalize some components to raise the capacity of these clubs. And we need to do all these things. It's a lot of things to do, but we also need to do them not 1 year, 2 years, we are not seeing any quick result and we done them. No, we need to do things consistently for many years. A consistent effort for 10 years, at least we show some result. Before that, we won't see it.
Great. And who is I just see one of our viewers commenting, CAF has a key role to play in all this. What's your take? Not really what CAF should do or not do, but what other organizations, for example, can support these professionalization of sport across the continent of Africa? It's a very vast region. As we come to our close, and also just look through some of our comments.
So about CAF, I think that we should take our eyes a little bit away from CAF, because CAF organizes basically competitions, and that's what they do. And then maybe they get money from their big brother, or I would say the father, FIFA, and then they distribute the money. But I believe very strongly that we have to do work at the lowest level. I mean, we cannot stop saying that, and it has to be a multi-dimensional type of work. For example, you were mentioning, the UEFA initiative when it comes to trying to preserve the game. All right, it's a beautiful, wonderful idea. I think this should exist also at the level of the continent, so that people who are involved in the game at the level of the continent can really make decisions for themselves instead of always waiting and allowing, Infantino, for example, and some other stakeholders who do not have the same interest as us, allowing them to make decisions for us. But this type of structure should not just be at the level of CAF. It should be at the level of the countries also, of the federations. And the same type of body that would oversee, the ecosystem, should be also institutionalized at every different levels, at the level of clubs, at the level at the level of communities, and so on and so forth, so that we can create that kind of synergy that would promote and propel, if you want, football into directions that are going to make us happy. So we should be happy in participating in this.
Excellent. Yeah, really the message is we need to create our own agenda for football on the continent, tie it very closely to the needs of our community, of our society, and also take into account the macro, if we can call it macro factors within the continent when putting in place these strategies to develop football. Thank you very much, Professor Simon Akindes and Dr. Gerard Aquindez. It's been an insightful discussion. I know we could go on longer, but we are just getting to the hour mark. And I will just invite you to give your concluding remarks before we close. Starting with you, Gerard.
Thank you first for inviting me again to share my thought and what I've been learning and working on. I think we shouldn't be afraid of commercialization, but we also shouldn't rush to commercialize or be frustrated because we are not getting anywhere with commercializing our football. We need to focus on what we want to commercialize, make it valuable, make it quality, and commercialization will happen. We love football on the continent, and there's a factor that they call the cultural proximity. Even with the invasion of European football, the fact that we have a cultural proximity with our people playing this game, if the game is well organized, we connect to it, we will attend these games. Then the responsibility for me belongs to those who are running football at every level of the society, should start thinking about how do we get quality at every level, and then we talk about commercialization at the end of the chain. And it is possible within our means, within our culture, within who we are as a common identity on the continent. And we shouldn't give up on that and keep working and been focusing on more long-term than rushing to get result now and everything will crash a few years later. We have to continue to work intelligently and commit to our objective, which is not short-term, is long-term.
Excellent. Thank you, Gerard. Simon, over to you.
Yeah, well, what I would say, I would use one of the Swahili proverbs to illustrate what I think we should do. Haraka haraka aina baraka. So, in other words, what we need to do, Africa is not going anywhere. We are going to go, but the continent is not going anywhere. It's been here forever. So we need to think about what we're going to do now for future generations and not be in a hurry. The second thing I would say is that when you build a house and you want the house to stand, then you need good foundations. And then we've had many models, many examples in African cities where people have rushed to build houses, and then 10 years later they collapse. I mean, this can even happen in the US. I mean, it happened in Florida recently. So that is something that we have to take into account. Thirdly, I would say we should look at ourselves very clearly and very honestly in the mirror, and we should not want to pretend. And then when we have looked at ourselves very clearly, and then we see who we are, then we can sit and think about how this is going to change. So for me, it is not about the money. It is not about, it is about the determination, the desire to change for good, for the future. And it is about the desire to take care of our people. And that should be the first priority. Put people at the center, and then you find the right decision, and then you can think right. Otherwise, you think wrong. So that's what I would say.
Excellent. Putting people at the center is really, really important. And let's think long term, and not just think long term, but also think intelligently long term. Thank you very much, Dr. Gerard Aquindez and Professor Simon Akindes, for your time and sharing your insights with us. We really appreciate, and we hope we can have you back again here to discuss other topics around football. As they say, you talk, and then something will start to happen. So let's not get tired of shedding light to the entire continent. Thank you very much for all those who joined us today. The chat was really active. I believe they were listening and exchanging between themselves. So these are the kind of conversations we like to get going. Next week on the Africa Football Business Show, we have a special session. We'll just put this up for our viewers. One moment, if we can all see my screen. Yes, we have a special session in collaboration with the Javelin Sports Consulting, which is a boutique law firm in South Africa. And we'll be looking at player transfers, understanding training compensation, and solidarity mechanisms of solidarity mechanism payments. This really is one of the areas where football has been commercialized, but it's really benefiting, especially grassroots football clubs and academies. So those who are running this kind of outfits, feel free to join us next week as we engage with our colleagues from Javelin Sports Consultancy, as well as Dev Kumar Parmas from one of our sponsors, Parma Sports, as we tackle this very important topic for the continent. So
Thanks with
that, I'd like to call this event. Thank you very much, and you're welcome. With that, I'd like to bid goodbye to everybody. But before we do that, also it's important that we appreciate our partners who continue to support us and make these possible. And that is OTB Africa, CBeyond Leadership Forum, Palma Sports. And then additionally, now we have iSport Learn, who are offering tailored courses in sports management. Feel free to go and check out their website, isportlearn.com. We also have the Football Business Academy, an educational institution that's dedicated in developing leaders in the football industry. Also, feel free to check out more information on their website, and you can also get in touch with us for more information. So thank you very much, everybody, and see you next week on the special session of the Africa Football Business Show. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you, everyone.